Hey, welcome back to Mocktails with Marina. I'm your host, Marina, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about the history of the non-alc space. So I'm recording this live in dry January. It is January 21st, 2025, and this is an exciting time because, of course, we're seeing the industry booming right now. It's been booming, but it continues to boom. So many people are really diving headfirst into this idea of either moderation or beyond moderation, also general potential other just ways of living without alcohol. And I don't want to necessarily use the word sobriety because everyone has different definitions and there are a lot of different functional things out there that make you feel some type of way. So we're going to go ahead and get started by talking about the history of the non-alc space in, first off, the United States, but also like in the world. I want to give some context to all of this, where like how this industry was able to get where it is today. And this is going to come from the perspective of kava bars, because kava bars have been around since 2002 in the United States. And when it comes to what's happening in the world with kava, yes, kava comes from different Polynesian islands, right? And it's not native to the United States except for Hawaii. But all of that being said, the United States is the number one country for the consumption of kava, and it's really not anywhere else outside of the United States on this like social front. A lot of herbalists have known about it and used it for decades. Honestly, hundreds of years we've seen it written about in very early apothecary text as well. So it's not that it's something new, but it's just never been something that was big everywhere, and especially not in Europe. I mean, there are still, there's not even a kava bar there right now, right? So as we learned in the very last episode when we were chatting with Matthew Lowe of the Kava Coalition, that's where we learned that, hey, it's really kind of up to us in the moment in the United States how we choose to respond to kava bars, how this is going to go for the rest of the world. And this may seem like, what does this matter to the entire NA space? Well, NA space, I think you should honor your ancestors, right? Kava bars have been around in the United States since 2002. I often see non-alc spaces try to say that they're the first in their area or the first in the United States. 2017 is not the beginning. 2014 is not the beginning. 2009 is not the beginning. Okay, I've seen these numbers pop up over and over, but 2002 really is when we start to see something different emerge in the United States that's causing a worldwide phenomenon. And we can't act like, even if not everybody wants to consume kava, though 8% of the US population has at this point, which is really cool. But all of that being said, why is kava such an important case study here? Well, that's what I want to talk about with you today. Because in order for us to best understand where this industry is going, we need to understand where it's coming from and what we can do to learn from other potential industries and decide where we want to go. Because again, call back to the episode that we did recently with Michael of Kava Love Lounge. We had a conversation about how when you take a look at how the vape industry came up, and then because there wasn't enough regulation, there were some companies doing the vape industry dirty. And then now what could have been a very luxurious market ended up getting this kind of bad rep, right? Smoke shops, vape shops. Now you start to actually see vape shops kind of separating from smoke shops because it's this whole cultural push of, okay, there are genuinely good products in the market, but there's also a lot of really terrible ones, because that's what happens when a market booms. We are right before the boom. We are like, if the boom is a TNT stick, a stick of dynamite, right? We are watching the fuse. The fuse has already been lit, right? It's about to blow the beep up. And this is the part where we need to make sure that everything that we're offering in the NA industry actually aligns with everything we're saying. Okay. Another example I want to give very recently, and then we will get into the history of kava bars, but the context is really key here, right? I mean, it's January 21st. Just a couple weeks ago, we saw that the Surgeon General said, hey, we need to consider that alcohol is a carcinogen. Another thing that happened, we see that one of the red dyes, the unnatural dyes, that is a known carcinogen that has finally been banned in the United States. It'll take 2 years to actually hit the marketplace in that way, but hey, at least we have one. We're looking for more. Where am I coming from? Okay, so let me give you one example. I had a brand approach us back when we were doing the functional mixology guide in fall of 2024. And there was this one non-alc spirit that I was obsessed with. I loved the branding. I loved the packaging. I loved the taste. I thought everything was cool, even the herbs that they chose for feelings, but also for flavor. I mean, it was a hands down, this was incredible. But for whatever reason, they decided to put yellow 6 in there because they thought the color mattered. When, in my eyes, first off, if you're playing around with natural dyes, you can use turmeric, and that is a really good replacement for yellow, especially when it comes to liquids. And then if we're already talking in the non-alc space, we already love turmeric. You add a little bit of capsaicin in your concoction because that's what gives the little spicy feeling, right? When you are drinking, what does capsaicin come from? Capsaicin comes from a pepper plant. What activates turmeric? Pepper, right? So it all goes together if you're coming from this herbalistic background. So why would this really, really upset me, you guys? This otherwise perfect product that literally could have just used turmeric instead of yellow 6, and it would have even been an extra functional benefit, and it would have all been wonderful. But no, they chose the carcinogenic ingredient instead, and this is an example of the NA industry doing itself dirty, okay? If we do not want to become like the vape industry, we need to first off understand where we come from, respect our roots, and then understand also what has happened to other industries so that we don't repeat history, okay? And I want to mention too, the reason that I think it's so cool to see where we came from with kava bars is because kava culture is very near and dear to my heart and my husband's heart. Here at the Modern Mocktail, kava has been one of the biggest lenses that we have used to become better at what we do. And what I mean by that is this. My personal journey into kava, I've talked about this before, but I'll summarize it really quickly. That started just after I became sober. So my career in hospitality up until that point was entirely fueled by alcohol. Not entirely, I shouldn't say that, but it was at the forefront. I had worked at a tea bar before. I had worked at nightlife establishments that didn't necessarily have alcohol. However, because I was a performer, there was always some aspect of alcohol sales that happened. So that pivot was necessary for my health and my sanity once everything, kind of cleared for me. And I had tried kratom with a friend in Florida. So when a new friend invited me to go to a kava bar where there was both kava and kratom, I was instantly inspired. I was like, okay, this is kind of familiar. I'll give it a deeper try. And it made such a big difference in my life. That's where I met my husband. That's where I instantly started working at that kava bar, even though I wasn't looking for a job. And that is what ended up launching me into my career as a chief operations officer, which really solidified my passion for the industry. But from there, my husband and I decided to set out on our own because we were driven by this very deep belief in the power of kava and the desire to help as many kava bars and non-alc establishments succeed as possible. So our mission is threefold, right? Number one, to ensure proper service standards for this unique product. Number two, to educate both staff and consumers about kava's benefits and traditions. And three, to create well-structured, manageable businesses that represent the industry in the best light possible. Why? Because we believe wholeheartedly in kava's transformative potential. My husband's father, a lifelong alcoholic, quit drinking with the help of kava. It has personally helped me manage my panic disorder and generalized anxiety. Kava has changed our lives, and we are absolutely passionate about showing the world what this miracle plant can do. So, back in 2002, there was the very first kava bar in the United States called Nakamal at home. Nakamal is the Fijian word for a place that you would go to consume kava in kind of a social environment. And this was in Boca Raton, Florida. So at this time, it was like entirely new to Florida, right? Like it was entirely new to the United States. Like there was nothing else happening. And kava in general was an entirely new concept for many people who were not already like trained herbalists, people who followed more classic apothecary methods, right? So all of that being said, though, like it wasn't just the drink that made the first kava bar and subsequently all kava bars different than everything else. It was the atmosphere that was created. So kava bars established themselves as third places long before it was trendy to do so. So these have always been traditionally community spaces that are not centered around work or home. They offer a relaxed environment where people could gather, socialize, and unwind, right? So you can compare it kind of to a coffee house, a tea house. However, it's a little bit different because each plant has its own kind of vibe, right? Coffee is very much associated with work. Like people bring their laptops. Coffee houses today aren't what they used to be back in the day. And by back in the day, I mean like pre-internet times, right? If you're looking for a place that's like a coffee shop pre-internet times, kava bars somehow offer that. And I genuinely believe that happens because of the mix of the kava culture and kava, the like spirit of the herb itself, like the way it makes you feel. Now, if you look at tea houses, traditionally speaking, a lot of tea houses that are at least predominantly in the United States, I mean, they're not serving like crazy, like psychedelic teas. They're not serving, these wild experiences. They're a lot more of the like Eastern Asian tradition, right? So you have like, if you have a Japanese tea house, you're going to see a lot of matcha. If you have kind of a more mixed tea house or tea shop, it's going to be more of that like herbalism vibe. Like, how can I help you, in that wellness aspect, right? But kava bars are so special because of the unique, again, spirit of the herb, but also the unique culture that has since developed in the United States specifically. Kava culture has taken on a life of its own. Naturally, that happens when it moves away from its native spot. But I want to mention that it did, like, kava culture in many Polynesian islands are going to look a little bit different, right? Each culture has a little bit of invariance, but overall, it's a very, like, connecting herb. And that part does not change no matter where you are in the world, just because that's what the plant does. So when you take that into account with the environment, you're automatically going to see that new ideas are going to form in this environment that wouldn't have had a place to form because, again, coffee shops are too high-paced or too loud with the espresso machines. Tea houses, a lot of them are very quiet. It's not going to be the same as unwinding aspect, right? Some of them are going to be a little bit more kind of just a different pace. Different music is being played. The fact that you walk up to a bar, unlike in a tea shop or a coffee shop, it's more of like a barista counter. That's very different fundamentally than a bar environment. So when you're putting all of these different cues, these human cues on how we interact with each other, even when we're not talking about communication, but we're talking about how we as humans move and work through a space, these all communicate certain feelings, right? And oftentimes in kava bars, when we look at the ones that were established between 2002 and even 2018, right? Like huge chunk of time, very many of the kava bars from that time remained very Polynesian in nature. So what I mean by that is, you're always seeing the coconut shell everywhere. You're seeing that kind of Polynesian island vibe in all of the decoration, in the music, in kind of the relaxed pace and way of, like, the aloha lifestyle, right? Like, you really feel the aloha spirit inside If there's Hawaiian kava and there's that kind of vibe, like everybody has their own, that bula spirit, however you want to come at kava culture and name it, you feel that generally like relaxed and welcoming nature. Now, the reason I say like 2018, 2019 is because like that was really the end of life as we knew it from before, right? 2020 kind of changed up a lot of things for a lot of people. So at that point, a lot of people got sober. A lot of people, that's really when kava started to explode. So more places started popping up everywhere. Now in Florida, there's over 200, maybe even over 300 kava bars at this point as of this recording. All over the country, there's even more. And I know when I first started in the Phoenix, Arizona area, we were the only kava bar. And then now, I just went on a kava bar crawl a couple weekends ago, and we couldn't even visit every single place in one day. It's amazing to see the growth, but with that growth comes differentiation. So now we're seeing some of these kava bars no longer look Polynesian in nature. They don't have the island vibes. Some of them they drop the word kava bar from their name, whether that's positive, negative, or neutral. There's reasons they're doing that. Why? Because number one, they want to be more inclusive of the other NA options, but that doesn't mean that they're not kava bars in the heart of where they came from. Or B, maybe they had to take kava bar out of their name because the internet is a bully and some social media sites were having a hard time with the word kava. It would shadow ban people. I know I personally have a problem on my Mocktails with Marina account. I am constantly having to kind of strategize around. So luckily with the Modern Mocktail, what we do is we actually do a lot of paid ads, and we have to because organically talking about some of these herbs actually puts us in a risky situation because we are working on the fringe. And heaven forbid I even say the word kratom anywhere inappropriately, because that will absolutely do the same thing. So point of the story is it's kind of like because of the nature of what it feels like on the internet about talking about kava and things, some things are censored, some things are propaganda, some things are pushed by lobbyists. So there are the old studies we've talked about over and over again throughout this podcast that have been disproven. Kava does not cause liver damage in the ways that it always was kind of illfully spoken about before. Right, we know, and we've even seen studies where, again, as we talked about in the Kava Coalition episode, there were signs where, experiments where mice, when given high quantities of kava, actually ended up seeing a decrease in cancer clusters. So I'm not saying anything definitively here. I'm not a doctor. This is just a conversation we're having about how much information gets warped online. It gets warped if you're not at the forefront of getting that information. That's why we went out of our way to get the Kava Coalition on here, right? They went out of their way to do a massive nationwide study to get all the information that we could about the consumers who are here now. What are their experiences? One of the most shocking things that I read when I was going through all of that data, beyond the episode, there was a significant portion of the population who had consumed kava, who had heard a lot of negative slander on news outlets from other people, just in general. And when they were asked after that question, does any of that change how you interact with kava? Does that change the way you consume it? And most of them said absolutely not. They don't believe what the news says, right? But then we take a look at the demographics even further of the people who consume kava. Overall, they tend to have a higher average annual income than those who do not. When we take a look at those who consume kava and their habits, why they're consuming it, what they're trying to kind of overcome, what problems they're trying to solve, or what luxury they're trying to, feel. These are things that are of the more self-aware nature. So the very thread of kava culture is so incredibly interesting. Because on one hand, we have a space that's your third space that's different from work or home. However, many people find their kava bars to be a place that's more comfortable than home. And they would rather, instead of work from home, they would rather bring their laptops in and work there at a kava bar. They'd rather have their business meetings at a kava bar. They'd rather bring their first dates to a kava bar. Like, where else in society do you see a meeting place that's so comfortable? And again, you can't even compare coffee shops because first off, most of them aren't even open the same hours. Many kava bars are open until 2 a.m. Many open at 8 a.m. So you've got literally everyone taken care of, right? And then when we're talking about other things that are offered, I don't know about you, but I go to very few coffee shops that have DJs or other kinds of events that you would typically see in other nightlife environments, right? And none of this is a diss on coffee shops. I love them. I go to them for different reasons, though. And I don't go to them for the same reasons as kava bars. And to be honest with you, for me, and when I'm kind of looking at it from afar, I feel like coffee is so much more go, go, go. And it's not even just because of the caffeine. Many kava bars have caffeinated or energizing components in them as well, right? Like kratom, if you're drinking a white strain of kratom, it's going to make you, fly the speed of light. If you're like, whatever you are trying to get done, you'll get done. It's a great pre-workout, right? So it's not necessarily that. It's also the spirit when we talk about like the energetic quality of the herbs. Like coffee is the working class hero, right? It's the reason that Stanley Cups got so big, right? I know we put other beverages in there, but Stanley Cups, if you look at where they came from, we weren't originally, making our fun little bubbly beverages back in the day. No, those started as coffee thermoses, right? They just evolved into all these other fun drinks we put into them now. So being aware of where things come from and then understanding how that intersection happens, what those small nuanced differences are, that's going to be the biggest difference for anyone out there who actually owns a business in this industry or is aspiring to. This is the biggest mistake I see when I see, for example, I've seen people from other industries come in who have been incredibly successful. I know people who have been incredibly successful making millions and millions of dollars in the cannabis industry. They come over here, they don't know what they're doing, their business isn't doing very well, and quite frankly, they're serving product that is hurting people. I've seen that happen. Even though fringy botanicals, we should all know, right? Well, cannabis is different. Same thing with I know people from coffee world, right? I know people who, they've gone all over the world. They have, touched the coolest espresso machines. They've learned from the best. They try to come into the kava world. They're lost. Because all of these different pieces, they all come together to create what is kava culture. And if it's something that you haven't experienced for yourself, it's very hard to describe. Because it's this it's almost like a limbo space in the Matrix. It's a limbo space that doesn't quite make sense. It's kind of hidden, right? There's a lot of people that don't know they exist. They don't seek them out if that's not in their lifestyle. But if you see them everywhere. Just like that whole if you see a yellow, VW Beetle, then all of a sudden you start to see a bunch of yellow VW Beetles. And before I said that, you hadn't seen any in a few months, right? Because it was outside of your awareness. Once you pull something into your awareness, you're calling it into your everyday lifestyle, you're calling it into your identity, you're calling it into your every thought. Now that's a different vibrational frequency. Okay, so kava bars, even though everyone decided to ignore them for super long, let's go ahead and look at the people who, have been a fan and haven't been a fan. When was their awareness? When did their awareness come out? If you are constantly going to bars, you may not have an awareness of kava culture at all. So you might be like, I never remembered it. Yeah, because you were first off busy, maybe not remembering things in general. But even if you weren't, even if you were sober, but you weren't tuned into the frequency of what kava bars are, you could drive right past them and not see what they are. That's the beauty of the kava bar that is so hard for me to put words to. Because, for example, a Starbucks will stick out like a sore thumb because of the logo, right? Kava bars are meant to be an oasis from society. And by society, I mean kind of like the fake part of it, the part that everyone refers to as the Matrix, right? Kava bars are supposed to be that escape pod, that little oasis that is just so different. It's the only real place, to be honest. In my eyes, kava bars are the only real places. And even if they are divey kava bars or they have more toxic work culture and they haven't gotten their stuff together, you're seeing the raw nature of it. Hey, I'm not saying all kava bars are great, but they're raw. They are reality. They are, you see, even if you are in a toxic kava bar, and what I mean by that is like toxic behavioral patterns, or maybe there's like regulars who hang out who kind of maybe bully other people or something like that. That is just a phenomenon of the human condition being so real that you can feel it. Kava is a real herb. To me, it brings out the realness and the awareness. And I think that's why so many high achievers love kava. That's why you see people who consume kava on a regular basis tend to earn more money per year. If we're looking at all these things, it's not that it's fancy, because to be quite honest with you, anytime I have talked about kava to some person who has no idea what it is, they kind of look at me like I'm some like dirty hippie for a second, because they're like, what kind of dirt water are you drinking? Like, what even is this? What kind of crunchy, what is this? Like, what vibe are we in? So all of that is to say, kava bars have developed a very specific and efficient workflow. They cater to a crowd that seeks something beyond the buzz of caffeine or alcohol. They promote wellness, relaxation, mindfulness. Kava bars offer a range of products beyond just kava drinks. Many have incorporated these functional botanicals, teas, mocktails, and even snacks, positioning themselves as the perfect spot for both new and returning customers seeking something just different. And what's more, kava bars have been pivotal in helping many non-alc brands get their start. Before the current boom in the non-alc spirits and beverage market, kava bars were already creating a space for people to explore alternatives to alcohol. Before I even heard the term non-alc bottle shop, I had already experienced so many of these drinks, even things like Three Spirits. Three Spirits has nothing to do with kava. The first time I ever saw it, it was in a kava bar, not some fancy bottle shop, because those didn't even exist yet. Like, there's something beautiful to be said here. And this is not, again, not to poop on anybody's cool bottle shops or any bars or any of the things that you're doing. I'm just trying to point out some of the things that you may not have seen because your awareness wasn't like there during these historic moments in time, which totally makes sense because, again, like I said, kava bars by design are meant to be off the beaten path. They're meant to be an escape. So you can't have an escape in the middle of Times Square. You can't have, I mean, maybe you can, challenge accepted for someone out there who like really wants to take on that design challenge. But I'm just saying in general, the energetic quality of the space is not typically Times Square or the Las Vegas Strip or downtown LA, right? Like these, you'd have to be very specific. You're typically going to be off the beaten path. You'll be down an alley. You'll be, and I don't mean in like a sketchy way either. I just mean like the whole point is to take a breath, have space, right? And that is something that, again, in order to have that energetic quality of having the space to breathe, being off the path, that space allows for that innovation from the community and for the community all at the same time. Now, running a kava bar or any non-alc business for that matter certainly comes with its share of challenges. The early days of kava bars in the US were marked by a lack of awareness and in some cases, skepticism. Educating customers about kava and its benefits was and honestly continues to be a significant part of our business model. Many people initially mistake kava for kratom or don't fully understand its effects. Over time, however, kava bars have become more accepted and customers have been more informed about what kava is and is not. For many non-alc brands, kava bars have served as ideal partners for introducing their new products to curious and health-conscious crowds, right? So we've seen brands like Lalo, Odyssey, New Brew, Tea Time, Luminate, and countless others that found their momentum in kava bars. Many of these brands mentioned, we already have some episodes you can go ahead and listen to interviews about. We also have other episodes coming up in the future, including one with Lalo in the next few weeks. So that one's super exciting. But all of that being said, I want you to be, side note, very excited about that Lalo episode because we're going to have Weston Porter on. He was the 4th employee in the company. I've known Weston since my very first days at the very first kava bar in Arizona. So we're going to talk a lot about how The non-alc scene has changed over the years, and what it's like to launch from a kava bar. Again, they got their start in kava bars and now they're on the shelves of Sprouts. How does that happen? And what is the momentum that kava bars bring? Because again, would we have Lalo today? Would we have Odyssey, New Brew, Tea Time? Would we have these? I don't know. I don't know the answers to those questions. I'm guessing not, especially because, in the stories that I know of people who formulate brands, I mean, they're always in contact with community inside of these kava bars, doing their tastings, figuring out what the community wants, what they need, where the gaps in the market are, identifying it so that they can create a solution and bring people whatever it is that they need. The journey is never without its hurdles, though. I've definitely gone up against the health department, the Better Business Bureau, city planners, police, and even congressmen and senators. There have been instances where I've encountered individuals who heard negative things about kava, but didn't have the experience to know better. These encounters have often required me to step into an advocacy role, educating stakeholders about kava's benefits and the cultural significance it holds. I never expected that in my career. I truly did not come into this industry assuming that I would end up becoming an educator and a consultant. Here I am because, again, this is so needed. I have had to go up against so many different government officials, and I didn't even know. Like normal businesses, like if you're just in something that's already established that's not super fringy, all you got to do is fill out some permits, do the thing, the cookie cutters, bureaucratic paperwork's already there because it's already been done. But when you're on the fringe and you're doing things that appear new to people, even though they're not new, they were just out of their awareness, you can't, you have to have a certain energy about it, number one. I try very hard to stay grounded. I try very hard to not get too in my feels about it because I know that that's not the energy that opens people up. What opens people up is curiosity and edutainment, right? Entertainment that is educational. And so, anytime I get spicy, I apologize. I try very hard to not let my passion come through in that way because I know the thing that's most important. Why is it so important? Why is this episode a thing? Why am I even creating it? Why did I write an entire Lalo blog about this? Simple. I just want people to understand where this industry came from, because if we can get kava right, we can get kava bars around the world. The United States, we are in this special moment where we are going to be the people who decide the fate of the NA world, quite frankly, because the thing is, whatever happens to kava, best believe they're going to come after ashwagandha or whatever your other favorite herb is next. Because it's not just about these individual plant medicines that help a lot of people. It's in general the people who write our laws, the people who create these bureaus that we're supposed to listen to for our health, right? Many of them, they were founded on a great concept, a great idea, but then have since then been invaded by people who are looking out for their own self-benefit. And this is not meant to be a political episode in any way, shape, or form, but it's so important that you understand the context of the governments that you're operating within, because we are businesses. Business by definition is we are helping the people, and we are we are watched by our governments. We have to, be the middleman between helping them understand our decisions, why we're making the decisions we do as business owners, and why we're doing so in the context of what's going on behind the scenes, that if you're not a business owner, if you're not an entrepreneur, you're not paying attention. Again, what's outside of your scope of awareness? Any laws that pass that have to do with business ownership, you're not going to even blink twice at. My favorite example is the conversation of corporate tax. I hate talking about corporate tax with people who have never owned a business in their life, or even people who have been accountants in corporations. I don't even enjoy that conversation too much there, because what's super important to see here is that, for example, taxes don't work the way that we think they do. When you are just a W-2 employee and you are just filling out some TurboTax or H&R Block tax software, and all you've got to figure out is your mortgage, maybe you bought a house, maybe you bought a boat, maybe you rolled some money into your 401k, that's like one version of taxes, but like your mind will be freaking blown the first few years that you do taxes as a business owner and you find out that nothing is as it seems. We are trained in society to hate business owners, hate corporations, when in reality, yes, there are some bad players out there, but have you seen all the good ones that do this right and can actually build a family legacy that can, not only build a family legacy for themselves, but help the communities that they're in by responding to problems that need to be addressed, right? And, again, I don't want to get too spicy here because I don't want to turn this into a political thing, but all I'm wanting to say here is I am, I'm in the United States. I am in Arizona, and we, you learn a lot being an entrepreneur, right? You learn a lot from this perspective. And what I think is so important to see here is in order for us to have the freedoms that we have in the United States, in the free market, right? There's going to be some good, some bad, some ugly. There's going to be some good, bad, neutral. It's all about figuring out what the game is, figuring out where everything came from, figuring out if there is some heated source that's trying to make me hate some other part of my industry. For example, if there are other people inside of the non-alc industry that are trying to make me hate kava or are going to hate on me just because I'm advocating for this herb, and they're not seeing the full picture about how these lobbyists, they might come after one herb now, but they're going to come after others later. It's going to kind of divide the NA industry if we're not careful. If we have people who are like, oh no, I'm only here for the alcohol analogs and anything else that's functional can, suck it, or vice versa. Like if we're not all trying to figure out how to niche down and get good at our lanes without blocking out others, like we're going to run into some issues here. Okay. So one example I want to really bring up that grinded my gears this week, I saw on LinkedIn when, everybody was really excited about the Surgeon General saying, hey, we really need to put cancer labels on anything with alcohol. And I see some people who were like probably ex-Diageo, ex-like alcohol, or maybe they still work there, but they're in the NA divisions. And they're like, hey, we can all work together. Like we can all be together. No, some of us are not here for that, right? Because some people are in this for like just, they see that this is an emerging market. So whether they like their soul believes in it or not, they're here, right? Then there are other people who like they went through the ringer in life and they're sober now. And this is like a passion that they're trying to show people the difference, right? So you're going to have different people in the same industry coming from different perspectives and having different like reasons for things. So I'm just here trying to be one of those to show you my perspective on where I genuinely believe, and I know many others believe the same, where kava bars really shaped the NA market. They may not be like, I'm not saying kava bars are running everything right now. I think kava bars are running their own side of things because it's a multifaceted kind of industry and kind of machine that we're all playing a part in. But I will say it did start it. And if we're not kind of mindful of the lessons we can learn from this rather than just like, I'd rather just like not, then first off, man, there's going to be a lot of hard lessons to learn on your own. But number two, kava, as you may have already heard me talk about in many of my other episodes, is a genuine like miracle plant. I've seen many people heal from it. I've seen many communities come together. It's the only place in my entire life where I can go and I can talk about something like scary in the neighborhood where, if you walked into a coffee shop and some scary event happened, you might bond with your neighbors a little, but it might get a little spicy. Right? Especially if you don't see eye to eye, if there's two people talking and they're on opposite sides of the political fence, right? But in kava bars, I've literally seen, because of the spirit of kava, right? What it does to you physiologically, but also the culture of everybody who kind of runs in the industry. I've seen people just have easy conversations that are not heated. that actually bring a community together, and then new solutions come out that I would have never heard anywhere else. So why are we not honoring that? I don't know. I'd like to see more of that in 2025. I always ask my guests, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about the NA industry, what would it be and why? I'm going to ask myself that question and give you the answer of the one thing I would change is I would have every business who opened past 2002 to stop claiming to be the first. That's the main thing there. You can be the first in your area, maybe, but to say that you are disregarding this history, that to me is not helpful for so many things. And it's the type of thing that the 1% on top, the way they keep us divided, right? They try to make us figure out, which one of all y'all is the best, right? Like which one of y'all's on the top. They make it seem like there's only room for one or two or one perspective or one side of the kaleidoscope. But in reality, we can all be there. That would be my biggest thing. I would just want everybody to change that perspective so that we can, actually come together, put all of our resources, our energy, our experiences, our knowledge, and really take control of this. Because again, listen to the last couple episodes. They've been really powerful. As Michael says, someone's going to come into this industry who has millions and millions, maybe billions or trillions that they can spend on and they will take this narrative away from all of us if we are not careful. If we are not working together, if we are not taking this seriously, that is a real reality. So if you want to learn more about all of this, anything that I ever talk about, I just want to mention here, and again, this is not about to be a sales pitch. I just want you to kind of understand why and how we built the Modern Mocktail. So, if you are coming in and you are just starting your business, you go into our discovery phase launch pad, right? That's the discovery and a validation stage of the business. We have effortless operations to teach people the kind of how to be a chief operations officer, but how do you build out your business and optimize and expand it, right? Bula Boss is our program that technically covers everything, but it's called Bula Boss because it's how do you be a boss, knowing learning all the lessons you possibly can from kava bar culture. So even if you're not trying to open a kava bar, if you're just trying to open something in the NA space, Bula Boss was meant to be the big deep dive. If you want to learn everything about the history and perspective and really just understand this industry at a deeper level than most people, that's what that's for. And of course, if you're opening a kava bar, that is the only program ever that I know of on the market that teaches you that whole thing. But I want to put that out there because if this is something that you want to learn more about, even if you're already an established business owner and you're just hey, where is this information? Because to be honest, there's not a lot on the internet yet. You can go to kavacoalition.org and find some stuff. You can go to different brands. Waka Navu is a wonderful brand based out of Fiji that not only do they share a lot of really cool insights on their Instagram, but they they teach you the whole process. So all of that being said, I just want to show you that there is so much more information out there than what's on the internet. I know, wow, big statement. The internet's a big place. But, a lot of us are still a lot of us are still older than Google, man. And one final lesson I want to leave you with, it's going to seem unrelated, but it'll full circle in a second. I learned this interesting fact about AI. So Microsoft is currently in the process of trying to essentially lease out what we know as 3 Mile Island, which is our version of Chernobyl, right? A nuclear reactor that got shut down. And Microsoft is trying to lease it 100% for them for only one purpose. That is to essentially run their AI. Now, what's interesting to note is the amount of energy it takes for AI to do something at this moment in time is 6 times the amount it takes a human brain. So if I'm going to outsource 1 + 1 = 2, over to ChatGPT, for example, it's going to take 6 times more effort and energy than a human brain would in order to solve that problem. Now, that is a very gross, simplification. So the nerds out there, I can already feel you poking some holes in there. Because yes, it's true that some things don't take as much energy, but other things take more. So it depends on what you're computing. But point of this is to say, in order for, whenever you're thinking, I know my dog, when she thinks, her head gets hot. We get hot when we are overthinking and all the things. If you've ever actually seen the internet in person, if you've ever seen the insides of a computer, you can see that inside of there, there has to be fans, there has to be cooling units. A lot of the database warehouse centers around the world, if you even just not even AI included, right? Even if you just go to Amazon's database warehouse, it's nothing but water being pushed through tubes to cool things down with fans in dark rooms and basements. It takes a lot of energy to make this stuff happen. And when we're kind of more aware of that, we're removed from it because we think, oh, well, our little phones do it for us. No, they don't. They're actually connected to the supercomputer that's somewhere else that now, in order for AI to operate, we're going to have to move to some nuclear power in order for this to actually work. I just want people to be aware of that whole process, right? Why? Well, I just want you to know that you are still the supercomputer of the world, right? What I'm trying to illustrate here is Google is still younger than me, at least, and I'm sure many of my listeners out there. And yet AI, it seems super cool, but it's still working on some stuff, and it is good at some stuff, but not others, right? Better at some computations than us. It can get some things done that we can't in our lifetimes, but other things not so much. Point of this whole story is we are being given a perception of information based off of our feeds on our social media, based on whatever news we choose to listen to, based on whatever content we're consuming, whether that's books, whether that's this podcast, whether that's other things, right? So if we have this awareness, what falls outside of our awareness? The things that aren't on the internet. Well, what's not on the internet? Either things that people just forgot to record. Likely not. Usually it's because certain things are censored, are pushed down. Like I mentioned, fringe botanicals. Kava is very difficult to learn about on the internet. Why is that? Start asking some questions and you start to see a lot of things about society. But I mention all of this to just empower you to please do your research. Go to local kava bars. Spend the money. If you are a business owner, it is a tax write-off. It is a tax deduction to go do research. Go places. Get your butt out of your home. Go to Florida. Go to Hawaii. Go to Fiji. Go to Vanuatu. Go to the Tongan Islands. Go to as many different bottle shops in the United States as you can. Go to all the different variety places as you possibly can. Don't get stuck going to one type of place saying that is the type, right? You want to see all the different ways that people have found to express this beautiful kava culture, this beautiful NA culture, because that's going to allow you ultimately to create an even more precise version of your dreams. If you want to open your own shop, you will be able to be so much more empowered to take care of things that could otherwise, be a burden. Right? Because as entrepreneurs, everything that we encounter, everything that we do is a reflection and a great opportunity for self-growth, right? Because if we are sticky, if we are scarce, our business will fail. It forces us to get better or else we fold and we have to start over. So keeping all of that in mind, enjoy the edutainment of it all. Go live in the real world, get real information from people who have really been working in the industry longer than the 2000 teens that people keep trying to say, okay? Do some research, look at other industries, and again, just know that we are a resource here for you at The Modern Mocktail. So as always, if you need anything, do not be shy. Send me an email, hello@marinamars.com. Take a look at the description of this episode for any more links, and just know I got you. As always, just let me know if you need anything.